Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums, and today I have another weekly check-in reading for the week of Sunday, July 12th, all the way through Saturday the 18th, I believe it'll be. So today I'm going to be using the Good Tarot by Colette Baron Reed, as it is Cancer season, and we also have a Cancer new moon on Tuesday, and so I just was feeling a little bit of this watery vibe, which I love how this deck is for Cancer season. And if you want to see my deck review on this deck, that has been on, or the video is uploaded this week, I believe. So all right, let's see what we have in store as a collective this week and what we need to know, or what we need, what do we need to know as a collective this week? So first up, we have Fortune's Wheel, which is the Wheel of Fortune, for what we need to know. All right, so what do we need to do as a collective? We have the Seven of Earth, or the Seven of Pentacles. What do we need to release as a collective? I'm actually feeling something up here. The Emperor. And then finally, what do we need to contemplate as a collective this week? We have Justice. Lots of major cards. Now, I do know that we have, the new moon in Cancer. I think the nodes will be shifting here pretty soon as we kind of get ready for eclipse season. We're still knee deep in the middle of Mercury retrograde. I think we're like kind of at the tail end of it. Jupiter has moved into Leo. Venus has moved into Virgo. Like, we're getting a lot of these kind of interesting energies that are shifting in the skies. I know we're gonna have like Pluto-Uranus trine possibly, I think this week. We had the Mars-Uranus conjunction. I mean, the astrology for July, it has been talked about for many years, because it's going to be not just intense, but also it is, there's like a direct correlation between what is currently in the sky and then also with the natal chart of the United States. And so we're seeing a lot of these energies kind of present themselves again. And so anyone that like studies astrology, follows astrology, understands and has respect for the aspect that astrology is a lot of patterns and repetition. And so we're kind of given an opportunity to kind of look at and see, where have we been? What have we done? What needs to be done? What hasn't been, addressed? What sort of lessons do we need to kind of come back on? So let's get into this week's reading. I'll probably pull some extra cards here in a little bit, but let's get started with these guys because this deck is a little bit bigger. All right, so what do we need to know as a collective? We have Fortune's Wheel. So this is all about things shifting. We have to get into flow. We have to have an understanding that things do not remain static. And if we have felt like things have not been moving in the direction of what we want or how we had anticipated or expected, the Wheel of Fortune is kind of here to say, all right, buckle up, because things are going to shift. Things are going to change. They cannot continue the way that they have been. Something needs to, you're ready for this next thing. Something needs to shift because it is time that things are different. Now, with this being what we need to know, this isn't something that we need to actively be aware of or something that we need to be present in the exchange of these things shifting and like the understanding that this is going to change. I think if anything, it's just kind of like a heads up. Like if you have been feeling like life has just really been holding you down, grabbing you by the ponytail and just dragging you about, which I think a lot of people have been feeling this way. I think it's completely understandable. And this card is kind of here saying like things are going to change. Now, the Wheel of Fortune is kind of associated with benefic kind of energy. It's kind of saying like things will change for the better. I understand that change can happen in any direction, right? And sometimes we're like, well, things have been going good. Well, they might get better. If you have just been kind of experiencing a lot of things that maybe you're lacking some clarity, maybe you've been feeling like, I don't really know what comes next, I don't really know what to do next, then this card is kind of saying like, what you need to know is that something will change, something will shift. And so we're given an opportunity to kind of reflect on what we're ready to kind of move on from, how we've maybe been hanging on to that doesn't always make the most sense. And so maybe we're ready to kind of do something else and do something different. So I think that this week will be one where maybe we start kind of feeling that sense that things are ready to shift, things are ready to change, and we're not going to be feeling so kind of, not to say like held back, but maybe even in some ways kind of feeling like I don't really know what the next step is. So be aware of what opportunities are kind of presenting themselves to you at this time and why. So the Seven of Earth or the Seven of Pentacles is going to be what we need to do. Now, when I think of the Seven of Pentacles, I think that it's very much this energy of like, we're just kind of waiting. We have, done what we could, and the seeds have been planted, the plants are growing, but it's not quite ready. So it's not quite there for the harvest, so to speak. And I think having the Wheel of Fortune, kind of like what we need to know is like, hey, yeah, something's going to change. And what we need to do is that maybe we need to just kind of await the results. This month may feel like one where we want to do something, but it's not going to be one that is going to be the most conducive when we're trying to do something, if that makes sense. Because the conditions are just not quite there. Things aren't completed, something is missing, we just don't have all of the answers, we don't have all of the information, and so maybe we're lacking some experience, maybe we haven't really gotten what we need out of where we are at right now. I can definitely say that the Seven of Earth can feel a little bit of like this frustrating kind of energy, especially if you're someone that's like, I just want to go, I just want to do it, I have the time, blah, blah, blah. But everything this week is kind of saying like, no, this is not a week where you're trying to hurry up and just get through it and just get to it. This is going to be a week where you need to kind of reflect on, what you've been doing, what seeds have you planted, and kind of tending to those things that maybe aren't quite giving you the results and aren't quite as prepared and ready for what it is that you want this week. Now, again, Pentacles and the Earth tend to have, this correlation between our spaces, our bodies, our behaviors, our health, our money, our finances, our work. And so I think for this week, there may be some of these things are coming up, but we're not quite ready to kind of see what comes next or what's the next best step and what we need to kind of do. So I think that this week is going to be one where we're kind of given a little bit of this like push and pull between what we're trying to do, where we're trying to be, what we would like, but we're not quite seeing maybe the perfect conditions for things to really turn out the way that we had anticipated. Now, with what we need to release, we have the Emperor. Now, this is going to be this divine masculine energy. It can kind of come off as domineering. It can kind of come off as, I'm the boss. I know what's happening. And the thing with, having this like energy here, which is interesting because we have, it's the lion, right? We're seeing this like representation where the sun will be moving into Leo here pretty soon. The nodes will also be shifting into the Leo and Aquarius axis. So we'll be having the beginning of eclipse season again. And this being what we need to release is maybe when I think of like Leonine kind of like energy. I think of pride. I think of ego. I think of maybe even like a sense of righteousness, of having to, again, being a little too domineering in some situations. And so maybe here we have this understanding that something that maybe we've been trying to do, maybe we've been trying to control, and now we're starting to see changes happen, but things aren't quite ready. And so we're still trying to be a little controlling. We're still trying to, and it's like, no, I just want to like lead from the front here, and I want to kind of be where I need to be. This is maybe a reminder that things move in their own way and on their own timeline. And sometimes we feel like we have a lot of control, or we have the opportunity to control a lot of things. But I think that this week we see the wheel turning, and we also have an understanding that maybe trying to take as much control of a situation and trying to do something is not always going to be well met. It's not always going to allow us to have that situation play out the way that it really needs to. And that can be hurtful to our pride. It can be a little bit hurtful to our ego. But I think that this week we have a lot of these reminders of like, hey, and even with like Jupiter and Leo, I know a lot of people had talked about how beautiful Jupiter in Cancer was going to be. And yet I can't really recall too many people that had a really great time with it. And that's the thing with, just because a planet is seen as benefic or in an exalted position, it doesn't always mean that it's going to play out in a good way for everyone. We are all individuals. We all have different things going on in our lives. We also have to take into account that blessings don't always rain down on everyone. And sometimes those things are blocked. And I think a lot of people are talking about how, we're going to have like Jupiter and Leo, and it's going to be all of these amazing, wonderful, powerful things. And I think that it can be for a certain demographic and certain people, but we also have to take into account, where is Leo in our own personal chart? What have we been doing within ourselves to kind of open the road to Jupiter's blessings in that area of our lives? So I think it's one of these things we have to really take into consideration. And I think that this week we're kind of given this like reminder of like, it may not always seem like things are moving the way that we want. And so we're given an opportunity to kind of take a step back and be like, all right, this is not about me trying to dominate the situation. And it's more of like, I need to look at how I can lead, and maybe I just need to release that like sense of like, I have to be in the front. I have to know what's going on. I have to do what comes naturally and next. And finally, with what we need to contemplate, we have justice. Now, justice can very much be a card of learning how to detach, right? And I think with what we need to contemplate is that maybe we need to learn how to detach from certain outcomes, detach from expectations, detach from wanting things to look a certain way, be a certain way. I think that there may be some things coming up this week that really have a lot to do with, if you've been on the right path and you've been doing what you need to do, things will work out as they should. And at the end of the day, everything always kind of falls into place the way that it should. Even if we don't always like that outcome, or even if we don't always appreciate the lesson in that outcome. Because I'm not saying that, bad things need to happen to good people, or that suffering is something that we all need to have, or whatever. It's hard to kind of walk this balance between, trying to be very like aware spiritually, and then also very aware that there is a lot of pain and suffering in this like corporeal, realm. And I think with this week, with this having this like justice card here with what we need to contemplate, I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities to look at like, what do we need to detach from? What have we been hanging on to that is no longer really bringing the balance that we need and allowing us to really see things moving forward? And ultimately, I think for many of us, maybe we have lost faith in things really making sense in the long term. And I think with everything that's kind of been happening, especially if you're in the United States, a lot of us are kind of like, the disbelief is like, we're past that. We're just kind of like, okay, like this is the world that we're all living in, I guess. And this is how it's going to be. So what can we do in this space? And I think what we need to contemplate is how to bring that balance back to ourselves. How can we bring a sense of justice? When I think of the word justice, I think some people really immediately go to like that law and order kind of vibe of like, it is, you know, having things be so neat and just so black and white. And I think with what we need to contemplate is that maybe we need to learn how to, again, detach from the outcome of the situation, to detach from, you know, I want it to be this way and I will feel better when it looks this way. And as someone that, you know, is a little bit petty in some situations, I know for me, like some of the stuff that's come up with this Mercury retrograde is really rethinking and rehashing old situations where I have felt like I was disempowered, and I'm having to kind of learn how to let go of this need, I guess, in some ways. I want these people to do what's right. I want these people to, you know, kind of come and say, you didn't deserve that. But sometimes we just don't get that, right? And we have to learn how to navigate our own sense of worth and really trusting ourselves in different ways to kind of say, even if I don't ever hear an apology for how someone mistreated me or how someone handled me without care, it doesn't mean that I need to keep that thread alive between me and that other soul. Because if that's all I'm waiting for, why not give that to myself? Is kind of like what I'm feeling for myself this week, is more of this sense of, yes, I can spend my whole life grieving all of my, you know, all of the ways in which others have disempowered me or have mistreated me. I can say, all right, from this point forward, I will ensure that I am no longer allowing this kind of mistreatment or allowing myself to just kind of suffer the grievances of others. And so that's kind of like my lesson that I've gotten from this Mercury retrograde. Not that anything crazy has happened. It's just more of like the rumination I've had going on of like, I also deserve to be treated with care and respect like I give others. And so that's been like a big thing. And I think a lot of people are kind of coming to this understanding of like, hey, I can actually choose how I allow others to treat me. So that's kind of the major cards for the week. Let's pull a Moonology messages card, since we do have the new moon in Cancer. It will be, I believe, at 20 degrees Cancer. So if you have Cancer in the later degrees, you may be feeling this energy. All right, so here we have stay in integrity. Oh my gosh, I feel like that really makes sense of what I was talking about, is remaining in your personal truth. Don't get distracted. Don't allow yourself to kind of be removed from your personal power. Because when I think of integrity, it's not just being true. It's not just honesty. It's not just authenticity. I think integrity is something that is so much deeper. I feel like it's this like core within ourselves of really tapping into that. And as this world seems to kind of devolve in some ways, I think so many of us are like, well, what can I do? And what do I need to change? And how can I do this? And how can I do that? I think this is going to be a time where if you really are leaning into your full and total self, if you are really like tuned in to that core of who you are, that is where everything else will flow from. Everything else will really like align for you and really make more sense. And I know it's easy to kind of sit here and, make a video of like, oh, you got to be authentic to yourself and this and that, the other. And I will tell you, it's not something that comes easily. Sometimes it can feel like it is costing you so many other things in other areas of your life, sometimes relationships, sometimes a lifestyle, sometimes the work that you're doing, sometimes habits in your life. And it can feel like you're being kind of pulled in so many different directions. But as someone that has really had to reflect on what is my own integrity, like where is my limitation between who I am, what I believe in, what my ethics are, what my morality is, what my internal compass is, I've had to really redesign and realign a lot of different areas of my life. And it can feel very lonely. It can feel like this road. It feels like you're just on this road by yourself. But at the end of the day, it's like you are at the end of that road. You are your destination. And so I think that at this time, a lot of us are kind of looking for like, what am I supposed to be doing? What is it supposed to look like? And what do I need from this life and what is happening? So I think that this is going to be a very beautiful and interesting week. The astrology is, again, kind of intense. It's a little crazy. Gird your loins, like I like to tell people. Take care of yourself out there. Make good choices. Make choices that feel integral to you, that feel authentic to your spirit, that make the most sense for who you are and what you want. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.